You're listening to Radio Free Radio.
Why do you wish to hear it?
I was very pleased with this, and now I want to tell you how to do it. This is what to ask.
Do you make decorations? Do you please yourself?
Decorations?
Are you fanciful?
Do you please yourself?
Have you any use
Are
for
you fanciful?
color? Do you ask for strange resemblances? Have you always been married?
Do you believe in history?
Have
Have you authority? Do you expect to seem selfish? Do you? I wonder about that.
You've just heard an excerpt from Radio Free Stein's rendering of Gertrude Stein's play, He Said It Monologue, with music and narration by Dave Chokroun. You'll be hearing more of that piece and from the composer very soon. Hi, I'm Adam Frank, and thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of Radio Free Radio. This broadcast is supported by the Public Humanities Hub at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, so thanks to them as well as to you for tuning in. If you want to check out previous episodes that introduce the Radio Free Stein project and its musical interpretations of Stein's plays, you can find links to them at the project website. That's radiofreestein.com/plays/broadcasts. Today, I'm very pleased to be speaking with Vancouver-based composer and musician Dave Chokroun. But first, I'm going to say just a few words before introducing him about the Gertrude Stein play we worked on together. If you want to get a sense of the play as I talk about it, please click on the link at the bottom of the YouTube broadcast page that you're on. He Said It Monologue is from 1915, that's to say it's another of Stein's early conversation plays, and one of several that she wrote while living on the island of Majorca, south of Spain, where she and Alice Toklas went to escape the air raids and coal shortages in wartime Paris. They ended up spending more than a year there. As is typical with these early Stein plays, readers are faced with some questions. The first question is, how many voices is it written for? The title, He Said It Monologue, implies that the play is meant to be recited by a single male or masculine voice, but the first lines contradict this idea. Spoken in English, always spoken between them. This is the setting or situation of the play, it seems, which is a dialogue between at least two people, and most of the play does consist of conversational give and take. So, what are we to make of this initial contradiction or tension between the play title and the play text? In the workshop we held on this play in August of 2014 at UBC, a group of us debated how best to understand this. Peter Quartermain, one of the participants in the workshop, suggested that maybe the play is a monologue in the sense that it's heard by one person. But others thought we heard 3 voices in the play, somehow voiced by only 2 speakers. In the radio script that I developed after the workshop in collaboration with Ada Smelbegovic, I took up the idea that there were 3 voices but 2 speakers, and cast the play for piano and 2 women's voices, which we called speaker and hearer. The action of the play consists of the voices remembering and recreating a man's monologue. He said it. And the piano, we thought, would play the role of the monologuist. To make things more interesting, we decided that the women's voices would speak in 2 different ways, a more extroverted address toward the other person, and a more inward, quieter vocalization addressed towards oneself that qualifies or questions what's being said. The piano player is also an occasional narrator, and the genre of the play, we decided, is distressed comedy. So let's play the first 5 minutes or so you can get a sense of our interpretation. The actors that you're going to be listening to are Lucia Frangioni and Liana Brody as speaker and hearer, with Dave on the piano, who composed the music as well. Adam Henderson was our director and Josh Stevenson, our sound engineer. The piece was recorded in April 2015 at Pyatt Hall in Vancouver.
He said it.
Monologue.
Spoken in English.
Always spoken.
Between them.
do you say yesterday?
Especially.
Why do you say by special appointment?
appointment.
Is it a mistake?
Is it a mistake?
Is it a great
Is
mistake?
it a great mistake?
This I know. What are...
And beside all,
There's a desire for white handkerchiefs.
You shall have it. This is what we give. We give it with a hat.
Dear me.
A great many people are precious.
Are they? I do not ask the question.
this is my fright.
Oh dear, I thought the fire was out.
I consider it very healthy to eat sugared figs.
Not pressed figs.
I do not care for pressed figs. I consider it necessary to eat sugared prunes and an apple.
I have felt it to be the only advice I could give.
It has been successful. I really feel great satisfaction in the results.
No one can say that short hair is unbecoming. What are the obligations of maternity?
Reading and sleeping. Also copying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you pleased?
I'm not pleased. I am delighted.
It has been a very fruitful evening.
It is not very likely she was pleased.
Pleasures of the chase.
Do you like flags?
I believe in painting them. I also inquire as to their origin.
Are they simple in color or have they various designs?
Nobody
Can
can
be
be
more
as pleased as I am.
Than I am.
I'm further delighted with the social relation I've established with a great many acquaintances. I began by intending to change the method of branching. I do not find it distinguished. Then I found that by choosing and asking other people to supply, I could be satisfied.
This is history. Did he see that he would kill a rabbit?
Many rabbits are troublesome.
I do not care to eat the one he was to give us.
You do not care to eat rabbit.
Who is our well-wisher?
I see clearly that you have made a mistake.
You have answered me defiantly.
I have not.
Large spaces of time are filled by my telling how to sing.
How do you sing?
Some sing so well they laugh. Others sing so well that they are roses.
I was pleased with embroidery, very, very pleased with embroidery.
With embroidery, indeed. Indeed, I think alone and make
lists. I do not make lists.
It is no trouble to make lists. I feel an infinite satisfaction in the thought that I have stopped worrying.
Indeed, you never worry.
Who can be willing to leave an American boat?
No one.
This is what I said. I said it to an Englishman.
Governed to be governed.
I speak of this very kindly.
I do not tell him about darkness or anybody.
Many people fear distraction and divert themselves with discussion, not I.
I am singularly adaptable. I have no opinion. When I am asked, I say it is distressing not to be right.
It is not distressing to me. I accommodate myself to it.
I am inclined to be talkative.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was the first 5.5 minutes or so of He Said It Monologue. The music there that you heard is composed by Dave Chokroun, who's a composer and performer who plays several instruments and works in free improvisation, jazz, and noise, as well as concert music. I'm very pleased to have him here with us on the Zoom call. So, Dave, welcome.
Hi, Adam.
I gave you a pretty hard job, which is to create a monologue as a piano composition that then these women's voices in Stein's play recreate. So you basically had to invent the pretext for Stein's play. What was that like, and how did you do it?
Yeah, the first thing I thought about really was that the piano, is like a character in a room with these two women. So it's a character, but it's also, in a way, it's part of the setting, if to use the little verbiage that comes from Eric Satie, furniture music, right? But a lot of the discussion that we went into, that you mentioned, like the preliminary discussion for creating the scenario, we discussed domestic comedy and we discussed melodrama, and what I wanted to do in my approach was to create the impression of a room with a couple of people in it, and maybe somebody goes over and plonks something on the piano in the middle of a conversation, or because they're bored, or something like that. And the piano has a really particular quality. It has a few qualities that make it really kind of a weird instrument. I mean, the piano's a bit magical in that it's like playing a 19th century grandfather clock with wooden gears. You hit a lever and all of this machinery makes a note, and there's a whole lot of attention to piano instruction and approaches to aesthetics and all this that are kind of magical, because they are about all the attitudes of the body that go into hitting a key, in a way, right? So where I'm going with that, the piano has this quality where it's very rarefied. The heights of piano performance, like your world-class virtuosi, are very, very high up there, but also the piano is very ordinary, and everybody plays or thinks they can plunk a little bit. And this is like there's no other instrument where I think about playing some improvised music performances at the old 1067 Granville. There's no other instrument where somebody from the audience will just kind of walk up to it and like bash around something, because it's a piano, it's there. So it has the quality of not quite being an instrument. It's a thing in the landscape, and the approach to the piano itself is topographic. A keyboard is has a kind of topography that most other instruments don't have. So there's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks. I mean, I feel like one of the things you're saying is, sure, a piano is in the living room, but like all you need is a piano, and you can have a living room, whether the piano's on stage or out in the street.
Yeah, and there's the bit too that for a time setting, I mean, pianos were much more ubiquitous back then, like circa 1915 when this is taking place. I mean, this is really before radio as well. So it is also the technology that brings music into your house.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the domesticity of the piano is key to, it's how well it suits, Stein's early plays and, your particular choices. I mean, you mentioned Eric Satie, so maybe we should just say a couple of things about him. I mean, and the fact that he's actually part of the same world that Stein and Toklas are in 19 teens and 20s Paris. So how did he factor in some way into thinking about the music?
Well, a little bit of the aesthetic, which I'm sure you can hear, and a little bit of that is just kind of capturing period music. I mean, it's a bit of a dangerous proposition to say, like, I'm writing music for something that's happening in 1920, so I'm going to write the music of 1920, because it's a little bit too one-to-one. On the other hand, though, there is, there's kind of a mixed up version of my idea of what a sound of 1920 might be like. The other thing that's specifically Satie, other than the, kind of the idea of furniture music, though, is that this is really a collage piece, in a way that you see in a lot of his piano music, the famous like Gymnopédie and Nocienne. And it's like, here's the bit, and we're going to plug in the other bit, and then we're just going to repeat this, and then this is going to move. Of course, historical classical music does that, like Sonata Allegro form does that, but Satie really lets you know, or it's clear that it is collage. So that's the other part of that.
Yeah, that's helpful, really. And collage, of course, is part of what seems to be going on with, Stein's own aesthetic, as these these sentences or pieces of conversation seem to be landed in from one conversation or from another conversation and pasted, sort of as it were, pasted all together. But the other thing I was thinking about with Satie is just some of his pieces, especially the ones that, a very, very amateur piano player like myself can plunk out,
yeah.
are the ones that have words in them. They seem to, a lot of them, not the Gymnopédie so much, but some of the ones that are for children, that for kids to play, seem to have, they come with words.
You're talking about like the strange little directions.
The directions, but then also it's not clear whether you're supposed to speak these words aloud while you play these very simple pieces, or whether someone's supposed to kind of hold them in their hands and have them with them while they're listening to the Satie. So it's something about words being part of the musical collage, and just brings us to the question of how the words and the music go together so well in your interpretation, I think.
Well, I mean, they they go together because they mostly don't happen at the same time, which was I mean, I would say my choice of language, I mean, it started as kind of a perverse decision, in the way of, saying like it's kind of a perverse reading of how are we going to interpret this. I'm like, okay, well, we can have music, and we'll put all the music over here, and then drop bits of it in over here, but it's also all the same music. So what you hear, as as we'll hear in the whole piece, is that mostly it's music and narrator, and then speech, and then back to music, but it does break it up at points that we decided were kind of significant. But also, I mean, there's an idea from Cage, but also, Anthony Braxton, who's in some cases has said like, well, actually all of these pieces can be played at the same time or apart, or they're all the same piece and they can be used in any combination. So the sections of the piano music are actually pretty closely written to stuff that happens in the scenes in the text scenario. And it has that, we discussed the history of melodrama, right? Where it would be like, here's your expository monologue, and then here's the illustration of it. Here's the musical, tone poem or portrait or whatever. Another way of, non-Western way of thinking about that, in the history of cinema in Japan, you had the figure of the benshi, who is like the interpreter of a silent film, who would be a live performer who would kind of give you rhetoric about what was happening in the film, or even kind of draw attention to how a character was behaving or how a shot was doing that. So there's all kinds of ideas about kind of like a meta line through what's happening on stage, quote unquote.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that about the Japanese form. So in other words, there's sort of a commentator, as it were, sort of like a piano player.
In the age of silent film.
In the age of silent film, you have, instead of a piano player accompanying the silent film, you have someone who's sort of somehow framing what you're seeing, which is great. I mean, that's exactly suitable to Stein's whole aesthetic, where it's always so reflexive and about the writing itself. And it felt to me that what you were doing with your composition was permitting that full-on reflection of the writing in the music.
And there's kind of a cadence in Stein's text that it has a thing of, I'm telling you a thing, I'm giving you a declarative sentence that seems incomplete, but in fact it's like this, and when I tell you it's like this, it's actually like this, and that's what I'm saying. So that kind of, I'm doing that really kind of whatever, but the cadence and the voice of it has this thing of turning in on itself, and a kind of, to me, a particular sort of time feel that is a little bit suspended. It's like, I'm telling you my idea, and there is no time. We're going to do this, and I'm going to do this until, to quote like the Stein's greatest hit, I'm going to tell you with such vitality that that someone, and maybe many people, will understand that I mean what I mean, right? which I'm mangling, the other second half of clarity is of no use because nobody listens. So there's a quality there, there's kind of I associate it with what in music you'd call a moment form, which mostly I associate with Feldman, and I actually don't know off the top if there's kind of a direct affinity there. There certainly was with John Cage, between Gertrude Stein and
Morton Feldman.
And Feldman, and also with Cage, with Stein, there's also a mutual connection with William James.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I could go on and on about this sort of almost like American post-romantic tradition. I mean, Feldman quotes Stein and talks about Stein quite a lot in his writings. And I think he's pretty informed, and there's a bit of a complicated story, because there's even Clement Greenberg is informed by Stein, but he never admits to it. So there's this real mid-century modernism that Stein is, I think, quite important for in the American zone, because remember, she landed in the States in the mid-30s and suddenly became this star. And then Random House and Knopf published works of hers every year for about 15 years. So she was really all over the place at this moment, and was very informative for Cage, for Feldman, for a whole bunch of mid-century artists of all kinds. But unlike Greenberg, who's so interested in purity, of course, he translates it all into purity of medium. I think Stein's fundamentally interested in how writing is a mixed medium, really a truly fundamentally mixed sensory medium. And so when I think about you as a collaborator, I'm really drawn to the eclectic musical palette that you show, the fact that I first saw you in noise punk bands like The Sorrow and the Pity, and I've also heard you play in the Thelonious Monk, tribute band, and, some jazz improvisatory piano, and then your MA thesis that you did at SFU on a fictional American composer named Larry Brown, which you then composed his piece called, A Hammer in Perpetual Motion, and then wrote a long commentary on it, which is quite fabulous. And I highly recommend anyone who can get their hands on it to listen to it. So I guess I just think that for you already, it's an impure kind of mixed medium, and words are central to the creative practice somehow.
Yeah, they didn't. They weren't always. I mean, but I have. I think that when I started, composing on paper, just meaning stuff that's written down, as opposed to improvised. I was really preoccupied with sound, or weird sound. and sort of all the materiality of especially like stringed instruments and pulling kind of noise out of there. I was exposed to a few pieces that made me think about working with text. I mean, one of the first contemporary pieces that really blew my mind, and I really got it when I heard it, was Contagious Indeterminacy, which I heard when I was a teenager. And that for them that don't know it is a series of text pieces and simultaneous prepared piano or noise pieces. They're all 1 minute chunks, and so it's got this kind of transparency of structure and intention that you kind of figure out while you're listening to it. Other pieces that were or use of voice and text, I was really lucky to see Robert Ashley come through the University of Victoria when I was going there, doing a big chunk of Perfect Lives, his kind of vocal opera, which honestly I would say I didn't get it at the time, but I'm really glad I stayed for all of it. But then, kind of thinking about that and other composers from around that era, Kenneth Caburo's Maledetto, which is a composition for virtuoso speakers. So it is notated, but there's no, it's not a 5-line staff, and there's very little pitch kind of specified in it. So it's all about how you speak and how you, the sibilance and the cadence and the speed of your words. Like all this stuff has kind of come in. The thing is that music is, music has the quality of being it has the quality of textuality in music, means that it's always kind of polymorphous in its interpretation. You just don't know where reception goes once you've made a piece of music. Sticking words onto it, for me, has been a way of very specifically saying, I'm doing a thing that's about this. This is the subject of this piece. And the actual text or the things that are kind of constructed and how they work together aren't necessarily as straightforward as that. But there is an effort to draw, kind of draw a parallel, make a one of the pieces that really influenced me about that is a really well-known contemporary piece. It's Frederick Coming Together, which I've produced 3 times. And this is the one where the text is written by a prisoner who is in Attica. He was an activist who was, like many others, murdered by National Guard in the Attica prison uprising. And so Rzewski has taken that and set it to music in this additive way where it takes about 20 minutes to hear the 7 or 8 sentences of this letter, because they're all kind of turning back on themselves and recursive and adding new things to the pattern. So that to me, that's kind of an ultimate piece of that does kind of a, I'm saying exactly what I'm saying. We're back to that. I know what I mean. I mean what I know, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it until until you know that I know, and so on.
Well, I want to continue our conversation, but I actually want to do it from the perspective of having listened to the whole piece. So maybe what we can do next is ask Josh to play the rest of He Said It Monologue, and then let's come back and continue our conversation, and also invite others to participate in it.
Great.
This is the way I say it.
I ask anyone to say, a bowl of water. This is not difficult.
A bowl of water.
Then roses in it.
Roses in it.
I prefer pansies.
Do you?
Or daisies.
No, we do not consider wildflowers.
Well, this is not the reason.
The
The real reason is the odor.
Some people like a strong odor like china lilies or almond flowers or even tuberoses.
I like them very much. I like them all very much.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
The other day we saw a woman knitting. She was doing it not so very quickly, and then we understood the reason. She was knitting with cotton.
That is quite the custom of the country.
Why do you wish to hear it?
I was very pleased with this, and now I want to tell you how to do it. This is what to ask.
Do you make decorations? Do you please yourself?
Decorations.
Are you fanciful?
Do you please yourself?
Have you any use
Are
for
you fanciful?
color? Do you ask for strange resemblances? Have you always been married?
Do you believe in history? Have you authority? Do you expect to seem selfish? Do you? I wonder about that.
Why do you talk about stretches?
You mean a series?
Yes, I mean that.
Do you remember that I said that? What do I feel today? I feel that I do know how to air a woman.
You mean that I make it too cold? Well, to be sure, I am selfish. I sit before the fire. I really ought to give you the best place, only I don't like to change.
You, dear, are so sweet to me.
A carpet on the floor makes it a great difference.
Indeed, there is a granite which is called marble, and rightly called marble because it is found here.
Do you know where it is made?
Yes, I have seen it.
Yes, so they say.
Go to sleep.
This is my way. In speaking, I have a belief in saying that I said it last. Some people differ from me.
This is a sentence.
What was it she reminded me of?
It is satisfactory. There are a great many plans. Will there be a good crisis?
I don't know. In our affairs.
No, the nation's.
Don't speak to her of it.
I am not certain I like liberty.
Don't you?
Of course not.
We go on saying what he said.
I can't understand why you contradict me.
There we are. I have a coat over my knees.
There is no way of speaking English. I say there is no way of speaking English.
What do you mean?
I mean that anybody can begin and go on.
And finish.
It's easy enough and especially hard when there is a use.
Why do you say exchange?
I do not know what they say. Exchange.
They say they believe in exchange. I often talk about nothing.
What have I to say?
I wish to speak to you. What shall we do about water? The water is everywhere.
Imagine me in bed.
We were very careful to ask about it.
Not for teeth.
Why do you talk about it?
Not for the girl.
He was, of course, not able to pay for the concert.
Not able to pay for the concert. I am not talking about myself.
I can supply furs.
In summer.
Today.
It is not very cold.
But it will be.
What did he say?
He said it was explanatory.
I said it was explanatory.
I said I was careful of climbing.
Not into bed.
Yes, into bed.
Why?
Because you can never tell about the slats.
I remember that word.
What did he say today?
A great many mountains have seas near them.
And the moon. The moon has no tide.
When do you say that?
Every night.
Why?
Because I've never seen so much moonlight.
I feel it very much.
A great many people were listening to your getting angry.
Talking about feeling.
This afternoon we went to New York and we spent the day together. We said, which way shall we walk?
In reading the papers, I'm often struck with the different ways I am impressed with the news.
Should I be cheerful? I should not.
Mr. Sandling says that I am. Indeed, I am.
We do not expect it today. Let us go to Sawyer.
All of you hear me.
I like to see the rocks. I mean stones. I didn't mean it about the clock. Here we are. Mrs. Kisses.
Mrs. Kisses most. I do like to say that.
Do you wish you had said it first?
Not exactly. I repeat more often.
A great many people hear you.
Not now.
All about the swing.
Swing where?
In a lamp.
You mean electricity?
Yes, I mean electricity.
Wax.
Do read to me.
We went down to the town and we met Mr. and Mrs. Somayard. We drank something there, and we said
if they would wait,
we would call for them in a carriage.
We had several things to attend to first.
I nearly said it together. Do I think that they will?
Do little walks tire you?
Dear sir, this is the end of the day, and I'm able to explain that a great deal of trouble has been taken.
I feel that there must be a regular time for the oranges.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Never have I seen so many trees.
It was a surprise to you.
I say that I'm certain that a great many things can be said.
Call it a fan, love.
I don't care to see pieces.
Don't you?
Indeed, you don't.
Leaving stones aside, what do you think of the weather in the country?
I think them both delightful.
So do I.
And we enjoy ourselves.
We enjoy ourselves.
Oh, very much.
Yes. What time do you wake up?
At 7:30?
I don't wake up until 9.
What is the date today?
Wishes. He wishes to think.
Do not distress them.
What we do is this, we give it to them.
What did he say?
He said he expected to be very ill. He said he expected not to be very well.
Yes, Mr. Lindo Webb.
Yes, Mrs.
You should always speak the name.
I don't feel that I can mention it.
Do you believe in me? Are you surprised that you have gone so far?
To me? Not to me.
Insulting, yes. She is insulting. She asks us if we ever heard of a poet named Willis.
Alice has. I have not.
She says he belonged to a group, like Thoreau.
I am not displeased with the remark.
Did we see the festivity? Water is amusing.
Do I want to go away? No. Indeed, I do not want to go away.
2 months.
In 2 months. Politely miss me.
Call what?
Millie.
Don't you understand the difference?
You wanted $50 for 6 days. We did not refuse a visit.
No one refuses a visit.
I do. I see.
A little finish.
What was that noise? I'm very pleased to have a good fire.
Here are my stars and stripes.
Yes, it's the flag.
What time is it?
Daytime.
Of course, in the morning I always go well prepared.
Of course you would.
What do I think?
Is not this certain?
What?
That there are a great many places where one would not be as comfortable, where we would not be so comfortable.
Certainly, I don't deny that.
We have been so happy here.
Yes, but that has nothing to do with the people.
No, it hasn't, but I like to see what I see here.
You know perfectly well you will be just as well pleased with something else.
Something else. Why do mules go together?
Because those people are religious?
They are very religious.
Were you invited?
Then I will finish it here.
This is very easy to please.
Cups and saucers all together.
We are going to have a picnic with chicken.
Not today. Today we are going to have eggs and salad and vegetables and brown bread.
And what else?
False, smuggled, contraband tobacco.
You mean by that it isn't tobacco?
No, it's only leaves.
I laugh.
You've been listening to He Said It Monologue with music by Dave Chokroun, who also plays piano and was the narrator. Lucia Frangioni and Liana Brody were the two voices, women's voices. One of the things I so much about this piece is really how radio-like it is to begin with. I mean, Dave, you mentioned that 1915 radio isn't really quite there yet. I mean, the technology is there with wireless, but it hasn't quite been institutionalized. Like, it's really the early 1920s when you start getting radio coming out in New York stations, for example. And yet Stein's plays seem to almost invoke a studio. It's like they seem to somehow ask us to stage them in the medium that's just emerging at the time that she's writing, and she doesn't even know about it yet.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of taking place in and outside of the head. I mean, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the remind me, where's the dictaphone come from? The tape recorder kind of voice, that sound. Because that was there very early.
So let's see. There's no magnetic tape until the 1940s, really. Yeah. So I don't know if there was something like it. I mean, you could inscribe on something like cylinders.
But I mean, just that sound, the voice on tape in our piece. Right.
Yeah. Oh, our piece. Yeah. Oh, well, because I wanted to thematize writing. And of course, in the medium of audio, when you want to think about inscription and writing, you have to use a recording apparatus.
Right.
And it seemed to me that so much of the piece moved back and forth between a kind of reflected on itself as writing. And I wanted the audio to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. I wanted the radio to think about recording, even though it was live, as it were.
Yeah. Run home to tape your VHS. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things too, like we were just talking about this, but I mean, I certainly, like, I've always had the sound of radio drama in my ear, you know, and I'm maybe just from growing up with CBC on constantly in the house. But you know, I remember when they broadcast stuff like the BBC's long adaptation of Lord of the Rings, like in the 80s, which I probably heard when I was, you know, like 9 or something. So the idea of just doing a narrative that's only sound and only voice, you know, has always appealed to me that way. I mean, you know, like you know, radio is kind of awesome. Like there'll always be radio because it's a thing that doesn't require the infrastructure of the interweb, right? It's like poor people internet.
Absolutely, and especially, you know, I mean, we are using that infrastructure right now,
Yes.
but I'd like to think that somehow taking the video part of it away and using a live form brings it closer to, you know, again, radio-free radio, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I want to do is I want to open up the Zoom line to see if anyone listening might want to contribute something. So if you have a question or comment or an observation about anything you've heard so far, please go ahead and click on the Zoom invitation at the bottom of the YouTube page. You may have to click on the Show More button to see that invitation. Please do, if you do participate, keep your cameras off so we can maintain the radio call-in style. And please remember to lower the volume on your computer or device to avoid feedback between your Zoom call and the YouTube broadcast. So while we're waiting to see if anyone shows up, Dave,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say something about the, you know, the radio and the piano. And the idea of the parlor, which is, I think,
Yes.
in my own mind, I've been kind of replacing the term conversation plays with parlor plays to describe these early Stein plays, because parlor, first of all, retains the connotations of speech, like parler, right? Parlor. But it specifies the domestic. It really requires there to be a domestic setting or situation for that speech. And of course, Stein's parlor is a place for speech, it's a place for living, and it's also a place for writing. And then just as the 19th century parlor has a piano, the 20th century parlor had, well, first a radio, and then eventually a television, a broadcast means. And so I don't know, just thinking that parlor, somehow the parlor is an important concept for Stein's plays.
Yeah, it's a small, well, you know, and when I was writing to that, you know, I was really, I really kept in mind that this is music for a small room, right? It's so, and you know, a little bit back to you know what I was saying, like the piano is present there, and it's there as kind of an ordinary thing, and you might walk over to it and play something you kind of half remember, and then do something else. So there's some like there's a reason why it's why the music is all mostly kind of written in the middle of the piano as well, because it's sort of what you know what you gravitate to if you're just kind of doing that, you know, sort of casually interacting with this instrument, with these little kind of blasts, you know, they sort of bang on really high notes or really low notes or whatever.
You know, it's funny because Stein liked to improvise on the piano, but she refused to play any of the black keys. She just played the white keys.
Well, that's you know, it was I think it was Irving Berlin who had the transposing piano so that he could play everything in one key. So he actually had you know a piano that had a mechanism that would shift the keyboard, like transpose the keyboard on a actual, you know, mechanical piano. There's something there, maybe.
Yeah, well, something about the continuities between the everyday living and the playing of the piece, that seems like Stein's writing is all about those continuities anyway, right? To insist on, you know, and that makes it somehow political in a different way, you know, to kind of to juxtapose all these. I mean, because one of the things that's going on in this play, as well as when a number of other Mallorcan plays, is that the war is going on, but it's from the perspective of these two women, I mean, in the case of Alice and Gertrude, who are kind of watching the war from the sidelines as before the U.S. entered the war in the First World War. And I just wonder what effect kind of moving between these, juxtaposing the domestic setting with all of these comments about the war, the flags, the boat, the American boat, the false contraband, the false smuggled contraband tobacco, which is, of course, another wartime thing.
Yeah.
How that works, and whether you think something about this interweaving, the insistence on continuity is like what kind of politics comes with that? Maybe in the Chevsky piece, for example, or other stuff.
The insistence on continuity. Unpack that just a little bit.
Well, just like she's insisting that the domestic setting is not separate.
Yeah.
It's not a political setting. It's still very much a political setting, and the politics between the two women, for example, is as important as the politics in the outer world. And in fact, outer world politics are taking place in the parlor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a little bit of the idea of distressed comedy, that we talked about as framing this thing, and I mean, I've thought that some of the distress came from boredom. So what I see in the play is it's a little bit of an exercise of thinking when you are, I mean, like so many of us are right now, sort of cooped up with nothing to do except wait, and so there's like there's a quality there that it's a play about thinking and investigating and turning in on your own thoughts, and this kind of recursive questioning of like, what is it that we're doing today? Well, are we doing that? No, we're not doing that. What does it mean that we're doing that? Right. I mean, I tried to write some of that in as well. The way that I mean, there are these cut up and repeated parts and things that are almost cyclical but not quite, and have a little wonky bit in them that just kind of comes in once in a while like that. So it's kind of like a steady kind of wobbly loop of ideas with these interjections that kind of come in from outside the main register or outside the frame.
Yeah. I was trying to capture that when we kind of started to think about the different qualities of voice. So on the one hand, there's the the extroverted voice where they're talking to each other, and on the other hand, they keep on qualifying and sort of almost subverting what it is that they're saying to the other, and we should themselves questions.
We should absolutely give props to Josh Stevenson, who engineered the recording, because in this, I think in this piece in particular, there's a lot of the sense of space and where things are, and just really subtle things about the imaging and the decay of some voices and some sounds that really creates an effective sense of it sounds small, it's not claustrophobic, but it does sound like you are kind of in a small space with stuff kind of coming in from outside.
Yeah, it's very open, even though it's sort of tight. It's a funny combination. Yeah, it was actually really fun to edit and mix this piece. So a lot of attention went into it. So yeah, Josh was great with that. It's, I don't know. I feel like we're coming to the end of this episode, and do we feel like there's any last remarks that either of us want to make about it all?
Well, it's it was a really interesting exercise to work on this. I'm really very happy to be asked to do it. The live performance of it was a whole other level of brain melt.
I should just mention that to everyone that Dave participated in a live staging of this, which took place at the Vancouver East Cultural Center in 2016 in the spring. James Fagan Tate directed, and Liana was one of the actors, and we had a second actor to replace Lucia. And yes, Dave played piano and spoke live.
Yeah, well, you know, and kind of like the closest thing to acting that I've done as a grown up. And you know, certainly like I've done a lot of performance, but you know, kind of that was certainly the most theatrical thing that I've done, and I actually really had to work to get my head into it. Maybe just you know, to not be the person in control of the stage, which I'm used to being. You know, and we did it in you know, quite a small and cozy black box theater, which again, you know, is kind of like yeah, I mean, like a black box is kind of like no space, you know, which is the point. But again, it had to me had that quality of well, you know, chamber music, parlor play, that you don't have to belt to talk to the whole room. You just do what you're doing, and the thing that's happening on stage is the thing that's happening, which is the thing that is happening, right?
Yes. Well, I think we're gonna bring this to an end at this point. So I want to thank you, Dave, for joining me and taking the
Thank
time
you, Adam.
to talk about it all. And I'm hoping we get another chance to collaborate soon. We'll just kind of plot and plan for that. And meanwhile, I'll invite everyone to come back in 2 weeks to listen to the next episode, which is going to feature short sentences by Sam Shalabi. And so I'll talk to my old friend Sam at that point. Meanwhile, I guess happy Remembrance Day, or observe that if you wish. And I guess we'll see you all next time, or I'll listen to you all next time. Okay, tuning out from Radio Free Radio.